Okay, guys, I'm Barbara, and I'm going to have a chat with you today about what it might mean for you to get ready for the Camino, and I'll cover as many questions as I can in the meantime. So we are, as you know, Follow the Camino. We're an Irish company. We've started in 2006. I'm one of the few Irish people in the company, funnily enough. We are very much a multilingual team. I have colleagues from America, South America, all over Europe, New Zealand. We're truly a multilingual team. Most of us speak Spanish, French, German, Italian. We can cover everything. And we are delighted that you've been able to join us today. We have, as well as the Camino, we have over 10,000 kilometers of walking routes that you can follow with us all over Europe. People come to us from all over the world. We're pretty good at what we do. We're very proud of what we do, and we're proud of the good reputation that we have. We have not only a good reputation with yourselves, but obviously a really good reputation with all of our hotels, suppliers, our drivers, people who supply bicycles to us, all of the people all over Spain and France and all over Europe who help us provide what we do for yourselves. If you come to us to have your Camino planned, you'll be given a specific Camino planner. It may be myself, it could be my colleague Catherine, or any one of us, Sylvia, anybody on the team. There are many of us working here, and we will be developing a relationship with you, which is why we like you to in the main deal with one of us, so that we get to know you and get to know a little bit about you, so that we are better able to put the right plan together for you. If you're a fantastic cyclist, or a beginner, or if you're a trail runner, or an early, inexperienced walker, we'll figure all of that out with you, and we'll make sure that we have the right kind of experience put together for you, so that you have an idea what's ahead of you. If you need shorter days, we can try and do that for you. It depends where accommodation lands, of course, but we can pretty much customize any trip to suit all of you, any one of you, whether you're walking solo or whether you're walking it as a group. What we do, apart from trying to make sure that we match you with the right route, we'll try to match you up with the right kind of accommodation. If you're a lady walking on your own and you're a little bit nervous about, perhaps walking on unmarked roads, we'll make sure that you're in the middle of every village, that it's easy to find where you're supposed to be staying. If necessary, we'll organise a lift to and from anywhere that might be slightly off-piste for whatever reason. We'll transfer your luggage every day. We aim to have everybody's luggage in their hotel by 3-4 o'clock at the latest. Generally, it'll be in your hotel by lunchtime. But if they're very busy, it can take a little bit longer. If they're picking up from lots of hotels in a large city and dropping off to lots of different places, it can take a little bit longer. But certainly 3 or 4 o'clock, you'll have your luggage. If you're in any doubt, if you're nervous at all when you arrive at your hotel and you don't see your luggage sitting there, you will have a support number. You can pick up the phone to us and we'll ring the driver, and we'll have an answer for you within 5 minutes as to how long you're going to be waiting for your luggage, because the guys will know where your luggage is in the van and where they need to drop it off and how soon they'll be at your spot. We will supply you with everything that we can before you go. If it's something physical like your pilgrim passport, your luggage tag, anything, scallop shell, anything that we physically have to send you, we will post to yourself. If you're doing a kind of a last minute booking, we might post it to your first hotel, but we'll post pilgrim passports and that sort of thing to you. Your walking notes, we will be sending you via email. You can access all of those kind of things, your walking notes, your hotel vouchers, in the client area of your booking, which we will explain and go through with you. You're going to be able to access your client area very easily. The things that people really like to know about, for example, packing, we've lots of really good blogs on our Follow the Camino website. Essentially, whatever you think you should be packing, you should probably pack about half of that. Um, I had a Canadian client who said to me one day that her rule was one to wear, one to wash, and one for spare. So she only ever brought three pairs of shorts, three t-shirts, three of everything. So that's a pretty good rule of thumb. There are lots and lots of places to buy gear as you go along. So don't worry about, if you leave a t-shirt behind somewhere, you're going to find a place where you can pick up t-shirts or walking poles, or pretty much every decent sized town is going to have a shop with this kind of things walkers are going to need. Other than that, I would say we do have lots of information about packing. Depending on the time of year, if you're going in high season, you're probably going to need very little in the way of jackets, maybe a little waterproof jacket, sometimes a little fleecy for the evenings. It can get a bit chilly in the evenings, even in Spain in midsummer. So some little layering for nighttime, something that you can give your feet a break with, something like flip-flops or open sandals, so that you can take off your walking shoes or boots and just completely give your feet a rest in the evenings. Also, most routes, you're not going to need walking boots. Okay, you're going to be able to use reasonably good, sturdy walking shoes. I happen to use, and we have no connection with Merrell, but I happen to use boots made by a firm called Merrell, Merrell, and I have never had a blister. I swear by them, but I should have shares by now in that company, because I tell everybody to buy Merrell boots. But mine are shoes just slightly higher, not above my ankle. I find it too uncomfortable to walk with something constricting my ankle. So you're not going mountaineering. It's pretty simple. Pretty simple walking shoes are going to be what you need. I always tell people to buy their walking shoes about half a size bigger than you would normally require. And then I wear 2 pairs of socks, a really light inner lining pair, and then the main socks. And it's also a good idea to turn your socks inside out, so the little seam at the toe is facing away from your toes. So everything that you can do to protect the skin on your feet is going to make your Camino more enjoyable. Which brings me to training, because obviously the fitter you are, the more you're going to enjoy your Camino. I can remember the first time I went on the Camino before I ever worked here, and after day 1, I thought, what's all this nonsense about? Pilgrimage, it's just a walk. Day 2, I thought, yeah, just another walk. Day 3, the minute I woke up and swung my legs to get out of the bed, I thought, oh crikey, I've got hips where I never knew I had hips, and bones where I never knew I had bones. It really kicks in day 3, and you begin to realize that you've undertaken something that you have to do every day. You have to get up and walk at your own easy pace, but you've got to just keep going. And that's why it's really, really important to get a few practice walks in before you go. Start doing a few 4-stroke, 5-hour walks. Work your way slowly towards a stage where you can walk for 4 or 5 hours on a Saturday and get up and do it again on a Sunday. And if you can find a few weekends or midweek, if it suits you better, obviously, but if you can find a few occasions when you can walk 2 days together before you go on your Camino, it's really going to stand to you. You're really going to feel that it makes a huge difference. The other thing that is important to say is the way you walk at home when you're practicing for your Camino is going to be radically different to the way you walk when you're there. Because at home, and I do it, and we all do it, you look at the time you're leaving, you say, I'm going to cover 15 kilometers, and you look at your watch when you cover the 15 kilometers, and you're delighted if you've beaten your own record, and you're inclined to try and make a bit of a race. When you're on the Camino, take a deep breath. Nobody's going to give you a medal for getting to the hotel ahead of everybody else. Just take your time. Every bend in the road is there to be enjoyed. That's the whole point. This is not about getting to Santiago so much as it's about enjoying every day and just enjoying what's around each bend in the road. And take your time, settle in. ease your pace, just take it nice and steady, and you'll enjoy it far, far more. There are lots of benches along the way and little coffee shops along the way and little places you can stop, and people will stop and sit down and chat to you. If you're walking on your own, you can be on your own as much as you like, and you can have company. You know, everybody reads everybody's signals. If somebody just says buen camino and keeps walking, they don't want to talk. They have their head down. But if somebody falls into step with you and eventually asks you all sorts of questions about your life or tells you all sorts of things about their own life, you realize that the Camino has its own ethos and has its own pace. And the best pace for you is just nice and steady. Get yourself there. You know, you probably get to your destination around late lunchtime every day, but you can always stop and have a nice lazy lunch and aim to get there at 3 o'clock. Just take your time. You'll learn. Day 1 and day 2, you'll probably walk too fast. So take your time and enjoy it. Generally speaking, we'll be looking to have you walk 20 to 25 kilometers a day. If you want to go at a slower pace, we'll work with you to customize it. If you fancy doing more, we can try to do that as well. Of course, it depends on where the towns are. Most towns on the Camino have evolved because they are the places that pilgrims wanted to stop. And remember, in the Middle Ages, people walked to Santiago and then had to turn around and walk back. So hundreds of years ago, you met many people coming towards you, which doesn't happen anymore. And those people coming were, I suppose it was social media of its day. They would say, you know, don't stay in the next village, press on, and there's another place, wonderful place a few miles further on. And so people talked to each other about the best places to stay. And so these little towns evolved for that reason. So sometimes if we say to you, look, you have to do 29 kilometers on day 4, it's because there's no other little place along the way, and we have to ask you to push on a little bit. Most people will walk somewhere about 4 kilometers, 4.5 kilometers an hour on average, you can expect. So a 20-kilometer day is going to be about 4 hours of walking. Might be a little bit more if there's quite a few ups and downs, but you can see that from our walking notes. We'll always say to you, it's X amount of distance, but because you're going to be climbing and descending so many meters, it's going to feel a little bit more, and we'll always tell you how much more. You know, a 20-kilometer day with lots of ups and downs might feel like 23. So we'll have you prepared. You'll be able to look at your notes every morning and have a little look and see what's ahead of you. We'll also say to you, look, there are water fountains here and here and here, and there are coffee stops here and here and here. So you'll be able to plan your day a little bit. If you're walking with friends and you don't necessarily want to always walk together, you can say, look, there's a little coffee place in about 2 hours. I'll see you there for coffee. And just make it your Camino. It is your Camino. There's no right way or wrong way to do it. I found that because I am not a youngster, I found walking poles to be incredibly helpful. They really, if you're not used to walking poles, they effectively turn you from a 2-legged animal back into a 4-legged animal. And once you get into the rhythm of using the walking poles exactly as an animal would walk, so not as if you're skiing, but you know, left foot forward, right hand forward, and you find a little rhythm, and you know, it can take a huge amount of weight and pressure off your knees and your hips. So I would strongly recommend people bringing walking poles. You don't see them so much at home. When you arrive on the Camino, you'll see many people with walking poles. Again, if you don't fly with them, if you're just bringing cabin luggage or something like that, and you know that you're not going to be allowed to bring walking poles, you'll be able to get them there. I've so many places, so many little shops in reasonable sized towns where you can buy walking poles and that sort of thing as well. Let me see. I think there were days that I preferred to walk on my own, just to have my head to myself. And there were days that I was happy to, walk along and chat to people. And certainly the days where you fall in and walk with somebody pass incredibly quickly. The hours just go by because you meet incredibly interesting people and people you would never have met in your normal day-to-day life. So it is a wonderful way to pass a few hours every day. If you go to our website, you'll be able to see that our training plan, we lay it out for you as best we can. If you're very much a beginner, we just say to you, do 2 hours one day a week and then bring it up to 3 to 4 hours and as many days as you can. And bit by bit, you bring you up to a standard where we know you're going to be comfortable. And if you look at the training plan, you'll find where your level is. You don't have to start, obviously, at the beginning, just find wherever your level is. I'm skipping backwards and forwards, sorry folks, as my head is skipping through ideas. Just to go back to packing for a moment, do try to keep the luggage that you're having transferred every day to a 20 kilo mark. If you need to bring more, please tell us in advance, because we need to warn the luggage guys that they're going to be carrying a heavier bag, and there may be a very small surcharge. But basically, these guys are carrying bags in and out of hotels every day. It's to help them that we ask everybody to keep their bag to 20 kilos. Your little day pack, keep it as light as possible. So a little small backpack with your water, a little waterproof jacket, your valuables, your phone, that type of thing. So keep it as light as possible. If you are not using our luggage services, if you're planning to carry your own bag, again, keep it as light as possible. I would usually say to people, try not to carry more than 10 to 12 kilos. You're going to feel it as the days go by. To be transferred does not have to be a backpack. So if you have a wheelie case, it's irrelevant. The guys don't care what they're moving from one hotel to the next. It's really up to yourselves, whatever you're comfortable with traveling. Where are we now? I suppose one of the main things that realistically people are going to be asking about now is coronavirus. We do have people on the Camino at the moment, mainly people who are from Spain. We've had a few people traveling. I've had Americans traveling, but they were based in Geneva, so it was easy for them. They just recently finished the Camino Portuguese in the last about 3 weeks ago. They finished. So you can get in and out of Spain. On average, at the moment, the Pilgrim office tells us that there's an average of about 720 people per day finishing in Santiago and getting their certificates. So that might seem like quite a lot, but September is usually the busiest month of the year on the Camino. I think we had about 400,000 finishing the Camino last year. So most of those would be traveling between March and October. So generally speaking, we would expect a couple of thousand people a day to finish and get their Pilgrim certificates in the Pilgrim office. So 700 and something, it's a fraction of what would normally be finishing, but it's, the Camino will survive. The Camino has been through a lot. If you think about all of the warfare in the Middle Ages and the Inquisition and all sorts of marauding hordes. Napoleon wouldn't like to be called a marauding horde, but yeah, he came in through Spain as well and down into Portugal and did his best to take over. And of course, there have been 2 world wars and the Spanish Civil War. So you could pretty much say the whole of the 20th century destroyed the Camino. It was only really towards the end of the 20th century, after Franco died, really in late 1970s, that people began to remember that there was a route and that they could go walking. So we were still not quite where the numbers were in the Middle Ages. There were more people walking to Santiago 800 years ago than there are now. So the Camino will survive. It has survived many, many other things. So it will be back. It's still there. And I think probably I could start looking at questions now, if anybody has any questions. Oops. If anybody has any questions, let me know. Hold on now. Where's the chat? There we go. So Alison, you wanted to talk about different routes for a beginner. And you're doing about 4 miles a day. 4 miles a day is about, let me think, 5 miles is 8 kilometers, so a little bit less, maybe 6.5 kilometers a day. I would say the busier routes lend themselves better to doing shorter days, because where there's more footfall, there's going to be more services. So if you, for example, wanted to do a week, I would say do the last section of the Camino Portuguese or the last section of the Camino Frances, because there are so many little services, so many little villages with guest houses and things that we can split up your day pretty effectively. So yeah, if you want to do a short day, that we can do it. We can manage that for you. Bob, next year is a holy year. Thanks for bringing that up. I should have mentioned that. What it means is that the feast of St. James being St. James the Great, the Apostle, he's the feast, national saint, that's the wrong word, I'm not using the right word, but the feast, his feast day falls on the 25th of July every year, and all of Spain celebrates St. James. And Santiago means St. James. It's where he was found, where his remains are buried. This is the whole reason that people go to Santiago, to celebrate St. James. When the 24th of July falls on a Sunday, which happens obviously every 5 or 6 years or thereabouts, that is deemed to be a holy year in Spain, and in particular on the Camino de Santiago. Usually it doesn't affect our costings unless you would like to arrive into Santiago in or around the 25th of July, which will potentially have a higher hotel cost in Santiago. We haven't really seen evidence of this happening yet, because under the current climate, they're quite keen to keep prices accessible. But it's possible that it could happen that at the end of July or around the 25th of July, that there is a little bit of an extra cost if you arrive into Santiago. It doesn't seem to be affecting other cities along the Camino. We've never yet left somebody without a hotel. So we expect next year is going to be busy, presuming the COVID is dealt with. It was always on the cards that next year, being a holy year, was going to be busy. We've never, ever left anybody without a hotel. We'll always find a way to find you accommodated. Cycling, Stacey, thanks for bringing that up. I generally don't rush to tell people who are doing a solo Camino to cycle. There's far fewer people cycling than are walking. So if you're a solo cyclist, it's very hard to strike up a friendship. It can be a little bit lonely, because you're cycling at a much faster pace than anybody who's walking. So even if you sit down and meet a great person at lunch, you're never going to see that person again. You're gone well ahead of them. So I would say, if you're interested in cycling, bring a buddy so that you're cycling in pairs. You will meet other cyclists but it's just, it can be a little bit of a lonely journey, I think, if you're a solo cyclist. Other than that, I would say most people do about 45, 50 kilometers a day. Again, we can customize it. If you want to do less, we can do that. If you want to do more, we can do that. We have people who do the whole of the Camino Frances in a week, and they would be super experienced cyclists who just want to do it for the challenge. They're not doing it for spiritual or religious reasons. They just want a physical challenge. Never speak to anybody. I think that covers it. Stacey, do email us if you have anything specific about cycling that I haven't covered here. Oh, we will supply mountain bikes, a very good make of Spanish mountain bike that we use. Some of the routes are suitable for a hybrid bike if you find a mountain bike a little bit heavy. Some of the routes, mainly the Portuguese coastal route, is quite flat, very good for cycling, and pretty good surfaces. So it's suitable for a hybrid bike. If you would love to cycle and we can supply you with electric bikes. And if something happens to the bike, we will either say to you, look, there's a bike shop right next door, or we'll get the bicycle supplier to bail you out. I did have cyclists who, I had two guys, I don't know what they were doing, whether they were racing or whether they went into a pothole. They damaged the front forks of both of their bikes. And it was a Friday evening, and we managed to get the bicycle guys to come out and pick them up in a van, bring the two guys to the hotel, brought the bikes back to the local bike shop, fixed them, and had them back in the hotel by 9:30 the following morning. So we can bail you out. If you get into trouble as a cyclist, don't worry, you'll have our support number. Cycling or walking, you're going to have our support number. So we're at the end of the phone. All of us, any of us who speak Spanish or French or whichever country you're in, will be able to speak to the locals if you need help. If there's something that you're trying to communicate to a hotel or to somebody, phone us on the support phone. That's what we're there for, and we'll help you out. Now, was there anything else? No, there's the same, Alison, you're on the same track pretty much as the walkers, unless you come to a point where the walkers are going up through a forest path and it's not terribly passable, in which case the bicycle notes will say, divert through this village and stick to the road. But in the main, you're going to be on the same track as the walkers. So let me see. So has anybody any more questions, or has anybody let me know where they're coming from? I should have asked you all that. Bob, I know you're from Phoenix because you've identified yourself as Bob from Phoenix. But has anybody else any questions? Patron saint, that was the word I was trying to think of. National saint, where did I even get national saint? St. James is the patron saint. If anybody doesn't know, it's quite an interesting story. He was having, been walking around with Jesus. He took himself off to northwestern Spain. He went, there is evidence that he was preaching in Galicia and made the terrible mistake of going home in the year 44 AD and got himself beheaded for his trouble. And his followers had his remains brought back to his beloved Galicia, and his remains were found many hundreds of years later, and the sarcophagus was saved, and this is where the cathedral was built around the sarcophagus of St. James and how Santiago came to exist. COVID. If COVID should close the borders again by any chance, we have your back, okay? it can happen that you might have to contact us and say, look, I booked and borders are closed, I cannot get out of the States, or I cannot get into Spain. We'll rebook, we'll postpone, there will not be a charge. We've already had to do it for most of our travelers for this year. We will rearrange everything for you. We'll work with you if for some reason you think you cannot do the same route and you want to do a slightly different route. If you decide to walk in Portugal instead of Spain, we'll work with you to make sure that the best trip happens for you. It's unfortunate this has happened to us, the whole world. And it's very hard to know what will happen in the future because things seem to be changing 1 week at a time. But hopefully next year will be a very different kind of experience compared to this year, and we have huge hope that everything will start to settle down. If you prefer to go on a quieter route, I would say maybe the early part of the Camino Portuguese from Lisbon, or the Camino del Norte across the coast, northern coast of Spain. Even the Primitivo, very, very beautiful, quite a tough walk, the Primitivo. You're walking from Oviedo through quite hilly but very, very beautiful country. Very quiet until you get to a little town called Melide, where the original way and the French way merge. So the French way will always be the busiest and therefore the most sociable route. So if you love to chat and meet people and eat with different people every evening, go for the Camino Frances. Anything else, go for something quieter. If you love really contemplative, quiet walking, the English way could be the one that suits you very well. It's a short trip. It's only about 6 days, 5 or 6 days. It can be a little bit quiet, maybe too quiet for some people, and some of the days are quite long and we just can't find anywhere because it's quieter. There are fewer accommodations, so you really would want to be reasonably fit, I think, to do the Camino Inglés and happy in your own company. So I think, let's see if there's more. Anybody else got anything to tell me? From Bristol, Sandy. Hi. Sandy's talking to us from Bristol and wants to try and get from Bristol to Santiago. It's pretty tough to get from Bristol. I think you're probably going to have to make your way to Stansted, or yeah, I don't think I've often tried to find flights from near Bristol to get people to somewhere. I think that's something we're not going to be able to fix for you. I think you're going to have to get yourself to one of the London airports, unfortunately. Depends on where you're going to as well, because you might find, if you were going to do the original way, for example, you might find flights to Oviedo, Asturias airport. The Camino from England or Ireland, you can certainly do that. There are certain routes, which again you can find on in one of our blogs, on our Follow the Camino website. You can do 25 kilometers in your own country, in the UK or Ireland, and then come to Spain and do 75 kilometers on the Camino Inglés from A Coruña down to Santiago, and you will still qualify for your pilgrim certificate. So it's a nice little way. If you can't get away for more than a few days, you can do your walk 25 kilometers at home and then go to the Camino Inglés, fly in and out of either Santiago or A Coruña, and walk from A Coruña down to Santiago. The English way, called the English way because it would have been historically the way many Irish and English pilgrims arrived into Spain. They would come down by boat and land in either Ferrol or A Coruña and walk down. So it was always a shorter route, and they sailed in and out. So that's why it's called. It hasn't got any particular connection to England. You're not going to find anything particularly English. It's very much northwestern Spain, but it's became known as the English Way because they expected to see English pilgrims coming into Santiago from that direction, having landed in Ferrol or A Coruña. Hi, Carolyn from Utah. Good day. It's quite early in your day still, I think. The flattest route for cyclist, Alison, sorry, I should have come back to you earlier. The flattest route, I would say, would be the coastal section of the Portuguese Way, Camino Português. So from Porto, it hugs the coast all the way up to Vigo, and then it comes inland a little bit from Vigo to Redondela, and from Redondela, the inland and the coastal route merge. So you have about probably 2 cycling days from Redondela up to Santiago. Walking days, I think it's about 4 walking days normally. Can be more if you like. What else have we, Nora? What else have we got? Yeah, Bob. Hi, Bob. If you find you're walking a little bit slowly on the Camino Francés, yes, you can probably find a way to get yourself to your destination if you're a little bit concerned. There's a few things I'd like to say. Number one, if you're a bit concerned that you're falling behind and you're not sure and you're on a quiet section of road, be sure you know how to send your location on Google Maps, because you're going to have our support number and you can just send us your location on Google Maps and say, I'm stuck, I don't know where I am, I don't know whether to come backwards or go forwards to find a taxi. If you're not sure of your location, send your location to us and we'll be able to say to you, look, keep walking, there's a cafe in 1 kilometre, and they'll call a taxi for you. There will probably be public transport, but not so often. There'll be public transport from one little village to the next, and you might happen to find that there's a bus in the morning and another one in the evening. Probably won't be regular buses from tiny little one place to the next, but there are ways around it. Generally speaking, if you don't speak Spanish, I should say, the nearest coffee shop will be well able. You'll have your voucher, remember, showing, you can show them where you're staying. Your voucher will have the name and address and phone number of your hotel, and they will call a taxi and you'll be able to get yourself to your hotel. If you're unsure, call us or send us your location on Google Maps and we'll be able to help you. So you won't be left behind in the forest. We'll be able to get you out of there. No problem, Bob, you're more than welcome. Bob Doyle, that is. Bob from Phoenix, have you any other questions that you wanted to ask us by any chance? Since you're here the longest. Alison, yeah, different types of accommodation. It goes from everything, mainly the people would have stayed in hostels in the very beginning, in the early stages of the Camino over the centuries, and hostels would very often be in monasteries and convents, etc. along the way. Most hostels nowadays that are public hostels are run by the municipalities rather than religious orders. Some are still run by religious orders, but mainly the local municipality. We cannot book the public hostels. The ethos of the public hostels is that they welcome the pilgrim who knocks on the door. So they don't like to take pre-bookings. There are private hostels. If you're interested in staying in hostels and you want to have your Camino planned and you want our help, we can book private hostels along the way. Given the situation at the moment with COVID, I would be disinclined to book hostels. I have a gentleman walking at the moment doing the full Camino Francés. He's in Sahagún, I think, tonight. And he insisted on staying in hostels and insisted it's what he wanted to do and he was comfortable and he only wanted to stay in a hotel every, Saturday or Sunday evening. And he was about 3 or 4 days into his journey when he realized that he did not want to be in hostels. So we've had to rebook everything for him. So we've managed very nicely to rebook everything for him. So he's fine, but he just got it wrong. He thought he was okay staying in hostels, and even though we told him we felt very uneasy about it this year, he went ahead and booked hostels. Next step up from hostels, you would have the likes of pensions and one-star hotels, which are very often called hostal. So Hostal is not a hostel. It's usually a modest little one-star hotel. Pensions and hostels would be very comfortable, very basic. You're quite likely not to have a bar or a restaurant. You might, but it'd be very basic little, simple little guest houses, simple little accommodations in villages. They're fine. If you just want a private room and you don't really care, they're fine. Generally speaking, we try to book 3-star hotels in the larger towns, and usually what's available to us would be 2-star hotels in the little intervening little towns along the way, small little places. If we suggest something to you that has no star, please trust us. There's a reason. Usually, for example, if you have a restored barn or stone building, it could be incredibly beautiful, absolutely lovely, really comfortable. They could be very friendly, could be the nicest food that you've had along the Camino, but if they don't have a lift, they're never going to be able to apply for a star. So the simplest little detail like that could be the reason that somewhere that is actually wonderful has no star. So if we send you a suggested list of accommodations and you go in to booking.com and come back and say, oh, some of these places don't have a star, please bear with us. We're picking the best places for a very good reason, usually because it's quite central or very easy to find, very friendly, very comfortable, easy to communicate with. We need people to be very responsive to us as well. So it's, being top of our list is when they're the right people for you as well as the right people for us to deal with. If for any reason we cannot find accommodation or availability, I should say, in your first choice, we'd go to our second choice. Our second choice doesn't mean worse. It could be the simplest thing. It could be 200 meters further away from the center of a village. Or it could be that there's a bar next door and we think, well, maybe it could be a little bit noisy till 11 o'clock at night or something like that. So we have reasons for picking places, and really we would ask you to trust us. We're doing our very best for you. Does anybody else have any more questions? If you think of anything, just please email us at info@followthecamino.com. and we'll get back to you. If you haven't been in contact particularly with us before, we will get back to you. So bear with us. I think now somebody else has, I think we have pretty much all the questions covered now. I think we can probably finish. Guys, thank you so much for your time. It's really been wonderful that you've all been able to make your time available, and I'm delighted so many of you are able to be here with us today, here on Zoom, if not in person. So hopefully you will all be able to engage with us and start planning. We know at the moment it falls into the realm of fantasy planning, and we're planning trips for people that may well have to be postponed, but I think it's nice to have something to focus on. It's good to have something to plan, a nice positive experience in your future. So keep planning. We're enjoying it and we hope you'll enjoy it. One last thing, I suppose I should, something that generally people know when they might like to walk, but I would say the shoulder, if you think the shoulder seasons are generally more comfortable. So try to avoid July and August a little bit, could be quite warm. Generally speaking, spring and autumn are going to be the ideal times. The days are still long enough that you have plenty of daylight hours and the weather is warm enough and dry enough. So I would say March, April, May, June are perfect. The likelihood is, I think next year Easter Sunday falls on, I think it's April the 6th. So usually around Holy Week, things start to get busier on the Camino. So generally speaking, Holy Week on to the end of June would be perfect. And then September, October is lovely as well. November, you can start getting kind of damp, very short days. If you want to go in November or December, we warn you, but we'll happily work with you. So ideally, high season for the Camino would be Holy Week up to the end of June, and then September, October. Has anybody anything else that they can think of? Oh, before I let you all go, we would normally offer people a 5% discount, but we have decided to offer everybody a 10% discount, providing you place your deposit with us before the end of the year. So we're doing our best to keep things accessible for you guys. So 10%, we hope. If we have sent you an itinerary and we hadn't applied the 10%, just come back to us and we'll change that and give you the 10%. If by any chance somebody got a quotation from us earlier this year and hasn't been given the 10%, we'll do it for you. I think that's probably about it. Who have we got? Have people had to leave? No, most people are still there. Fantastic. So I think that's about it, guys. I don't think there's anything else that I can think of just for the moment. We have another webinar same time next week, that is specifically talking about the Holy Year. Let me just double check, Nancy. Have I covered everything for everybody? Oh, sorry, Bob. I beg your pardon. You have another question for me. Napoleon route from Saint-Jean. I think the day after October, when October ends, the first day of November, they don't like you going up there. They don't actually close it, but they'll charge you a significant amount of money, about €7,000 if they have to come and find you. Now, I walked it in April, mid-April, about 3 years ago. And when I started that morning, it was really, really cloudy. So I asked them in the hotel, and everybody, they all know the hills if you ask locally. And they said to me, just hold on, have a coffee, wait for an hour, that's going to burn off. And they were right. I waited, and it did burn off, and I started walking, and I was able to go over the Route Napoleon. And it's wonderful. It's probably one of the most beautiful stretches. And I see now I've missed a few questions. Hold on one moment. Finisterre Way. Yep, Lisa, we can do that for you, absolutely. Whether you want to walk out to Finisterre or whether you want to do the little extension on out to Muxía, we can organise that for you, help you with your luggage, and either give you advice on getting the bus from Finisterre back to Santiago, or we can arrange a transfer. Guys, we can arrange a transfer if anybody needs, to get from an airport and cannot rely on public transport because you're arriving at an odd time. We can do that for you as well. September and October are usually the busiest times. Yep, definitely. Definitely. Not this year, needless to say, but most years, September and October are very much the busy season on the Camino, especially the last sections of the Camino Francés and the Camino Portuguese, because if people just want to come for a week and want to finish in Santiago, obviously they will do the last 100k of whatever route. And those, if you're walking the full way, Bob, if you were starting to walk the full way, you'd notice a significant change from Sarria. You'd suddenly realize there are many more people on the route than there had been the previous day. So many people will want to walk the last section. Darn COVID, Carolyn, you're so right. Absolutely. I think I've covered. Oh, somebody else. Here's a new message. Oh, Sandy, thank you very much. If we can help any more, you know where to find us. I'm sure there are many things that I've forgotten to cover, but we aim to please, so you know where we are, and we can always help you and engage, you know, have a private conversation. We're always available. You can see on our website, you'll see if you're phoning from the US, we have a US low-call number, same from Canada, and from the UK, you'll see we have a UK number as well. You're getting through to us here, but you'll be transferred to us, but it's a low-call number, so you won't be spending an arm and a leg. So brilliant. I'm going to say goodbye to you all now. Thank you so much for your time and your patience. Take care.